Hello everybody and welcome back to TechZulu live from Source13 by Flurry, and I am now joined with Ruth Barnett from Swiftykey. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're clearly not from around here.
Yeah, you've already exposed me. I'm a Brit. I've just come over to San Francisco for a week to meet members of our team who've just come over, but we're a London-based company, Swiftykey. Even though we're a big hit in the US and around the world, people don't necessarily know that actually we're Londoners.
So we're divided by a common language, apparently. What is it like to come here from London? I mean, I've been there quite a bit myself. It's a totally different market. So coming to, quite admittedly, the home base, really, of a lot of this technology, how does that feel? What are you experiencing here?
It's just been great to meet so many people. I think the biggest surprise is just the density of mobile experts and innovators and entrepreneurs in this space. You know, I've been walking down the street and my friends have been like, oh, these are all the offices of all of the websites that you read on a daily basis, and they're all here, and here are all these people, and particularly this Source13 event, I've met so many people who are so relevant to this space. But I would say in London's favour, I really think it's up and coming. There's a really growing scene there of entrepreneurs. It's now possible to have a startup that's homegrown in London that can become a global hit, and we've got a sort of growing ecosystem and support network. So I'd like to think that we can become a player on this scene and a rival to San Francisco, but we're not there yet, and it still rains a lot.
I think that the world is still big enough that tech can exist all over the globe. How about that?
I think you're right. I think that that's the ideal situation that we're moving into, and then you see developing markets and emerging markets where really exciting stuff's happening, and I just think that makes it better for everyone, right? The better our rivals get, the better we get, the better San Francisco gets, the better London has to compete to be, and that's how it should be.
And mobile first. Everyone keeps talking about mobile first. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. I mean, I think we just see it in our own behavior, don't we? I wake up in the morning and I reach for my phone and I check my emails and I check the news, and all of the time I'm then interacting with the kind of apps and things from the biggest brands down to something like Swiftykey that's so integrated in your mobile experience now. It follows you across, you know, whether you're messaging or Facebooking or whatever. So that's sort of a seamless experience. And I do my interaction with the world through my mobile. That's how I talk to people. That's how I shop increasingly. I think that's one of the bigger trends, and it's definitely how I access and share information. I feel like just glad the rest of the world's keeping up. I think a lot of us have been like that for a long time, and now we're seeing brands and retailers and developers kind of moving so aggressively in that space. I think it's really exciting.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit more about what Swiftykey is doing.
Yeah, so a lot of people will know Swiftykey at the moment, particularly if they're an Android user. So we're a really big player on the paid app charts in Google Play. And basically what Swiftykey does, it revolutionizes the way that you're going to type on touchscreens. It uses artificial intelligence to predict what word you're going to say next.
We love AI.
Exactly, it's all about AI, right? It's all about being a bit smarter and making that experience with your mobile or your tablet a little bit cleverer. So we want to end that kind of damn you autocorrect experience, because we've all been there.
That really embarrassing damn you autocorrect experience.
Yeah, and really there's no excuse for the technology to let you down to that extent, right? But it's also not just within that word, it's trying to predict accurately what word you're going to say next. And we find that when you've used that a little while, it starts to learn really how you personally write, the things you talk about.
Does this mean, Ruth, that it will understand my English and the way I'm talking in my English versus your English?
Completely. So firstly, we have language provision for 54 languages, and that includes American English and I would call English. But
as an American, what if I say I'm peckish? Am I just going to completely confuse the thing?
No, Swiftykey's thankfully clever enough to start learning from you. So the moment you start using...
It's going to say, this chick is weird. That's what it's going to say.
Yeah, if it could talk, I think it would say a lot about all of us. But the moment you start interacting with your device when you've downloaded Swiftykey, it's going to start learning everything about how you interact with the keyboard physically, where you're most accurate, where you're a bit sloppy, down to the kind of language, the places that you're talking about, and really it's all about context.
All it's going to say is, Joe Braywood is awesome, Joe Braywood is awesome, Joe Braywood is awesome. I don't know where that just came from. I don't know. Something about that. Swiftykey. Let's talk a little bit more about Android. Android, you know, a lot of people have kind of eschewed it at first, and how can it compete with iPhone? But Android's come a long way, and people are really starting to pay attention. So what are your thoughts there?
I think it's so exciting. I mean, I only joined Swiftykey in April, and even like last April, I think that a lot of the narrative around Android was, you know, a lot of male techies that liked it because they like to hack up their phones and interact and customize with them. I don't think it necessarily had a kind of cool reputation, and particularly on the London media scene, everyone had iPhones and they were really unbudgeable from that. I think that's really changed. I think particularly it's driven by some really cool devices. I've just got a Nexus. It's just the most beautiful thing.
Huge screens, by the way. Beautiful, beautiful screen.
Exactly, and I think a lot of my friends are starting to use like Galaxy S3s, Note 2s, without necessarily feeling that they're making a conscious choice that they're now joining some kind of Android revolution. And I think that the market's growing. That's really amazing opportunity for companies like Swiftykey, who've predominantly dealt with consumers in that kind of way. And then I think particularly you go around the world and you go to like India and other kind of emerging markets and they're all on Androids. Like it's a huge player in some of those spaces and it's only getting bigger. So I think the opportunity for companies that are like us who've been Android first is going to be exciting 2013.
So what was the initial reason behind going Android first? Was Joe just nuts? I mean, what was the deal here? Not just Joe, but the whole team.
Well, I think Android has been the platform that's been flexible enough for apps like ours to get under the skin. So we know that there's a big problem with iOS, that they won't let third-party keyboards sell. They won't let anything get sort of into the phone to that kind of extent, which would have really restricted the kind of work that we could do. So I think Android was a natural choice for them. I think what the founders didn't expect was how big that consumer app was going to be. I think that they saw it as a valuable showcase for what was actually a really powerful language technology engine that they'd built underneath that they wanted to, take to enterprises and take to OEMs and take to the world. But actually, what they've tapped into was this huge demand. And I think no one would have thought that a keyboard could be the #1 paid app in the world for 2012, right? You'd think it would just be relegated to the productivity charts, but that really hasn't been the case. And I think this has been a wonderful wake-up to the rest of the industry to say the typing experience for most people just isn't good enough, and they want it to be better. We're all doing our work, our social lives through mobile devices, and yet often interacting with a device is like banging your head against a brick wall.
It's a pain. I mean, I've got the smallest hands, but even with me, it's really, really tough. So the last thing I want to focus on, Ruth, is because our audience, we've got a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of first-timers, investors, and whatnot. And I know through the grapevine that you thought joining a startup was crazy, apparently. And yet, here you are now with Swiftykey. What made you take that leap? And you're obviously having a great time. So what was it that pushed you off that ledge to go, I'm going to do this crazy thing and join a startup?
Yeah, I mean, I had absolutely no plans to change career. I was a journalist. I was a national news journalist in the UK with Sky News. But I'd known Joe Braidwood, who's the CMO, a long time, and he used to work with me at Sky. And 2 years ago, he said, look, I'm going to go and join a company that you've never heard of, that was set up by some friends of mine, because I think they're onto something. Yeah, and he said, strategically, what do you think? And I said, you're absolutely crazy. You're giving up a contract in a recession to go and work for your mate's idea. Well, 2 years later, he hired me, so he's having the last laugh. But I think the strength of it was that he came to me and asked me to get on board, and I went and met John and Ben, the founders, and I went and met the team, and they really showed me the product and what it could do. And I just thought, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I think what they're creating here is mind-blowing, and I wanted to be part of that. And I think it's not just what they're creating in terms of a product, which I think is completely revolutionary, but it's what they've created as a workplace, and they wanted to be innovators, and they wanted to give us all the space to be innovators. And that opportunity does not come very often. So changed my life a year ago. Best decision I ever made. I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Everyone should join a startup, or everyone should come work for Swiftykey.
You heard that first here. Everyone should join a startup or join Swiftykey. Well, thank you so much, Ruth. Been a pleasure to have you, and we love talking to Swiftykey, and hopefully we will be meeting up again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.